Hi, awesome people. Welcome to episode 93 of the Unleash and Thrive podcast. How are you doing today? How is your day going? I hope it's going wonderful. So, today I want to share on 7 things to do with your story. So, 7 things you can do, 7 things you should do, 7 things you must do. Just 7 things that can turn around what your story is. That's what I want to talk about. It's interesting that each one of us has a story. If you ask 4 different people, they will give you their background, they will give you the story of their life, they will give you their experiences, they will give you the things that they've gone through, they will give you the trauma that they've gone through, they will give you things that you hear it and you're like, wow, you mean you've gone through that? So every single one of us has a story. I, however, find that even though each one of us has a story, not all of us leverage on our story. Did you hear me right? Yes, you did. And so when I say leverage on our story, it simply means not every one of us thinks our story is valuable. So I often believe that for everything we've gone through in life, one of my favorite verses is Romans 8:28 that says, and we know, for we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are called according to his purpose. So what is that simply is saying that everything you and I have gone through, there was a reason for us going through it. But what I've also now found is that for everything that we've gone through, it's something that can actually help another person. And that's why today I'm sharing with you about your story. Maybe you're someone that you've gone through a particular challenge, and now you're seeing people around you going through that same challenge. Maybe you could come alongside those people and begin to share your story. I always believe that there is power in each of our stories. Our stories are powerful. Why? Because those things that we have gone through have now become something that we can share with somebody else. We can use it to encourage somebody. We can use it to strengthen somebody else. So as you listen to these 7 things today, just think of them. Which one of them can I pick up? Which one of them can I use? Or could I even use all 7 of those things? Or which one of them am I already doing? Which one of them am I not doing yet? Which one of them do I need to start doing? I just believe that, your story is powerful, my story is powerful, and our stories really do strengthen the next person that is coming after you and I. So the very first thing I want to share about your story is do not waste your story. So like I said, a lot of us, we've gone through challenges, we've gone through traumatic times. I often share my story of, going through a suicide attempt. I often share, actually 2 suicide attempts. I often share that story. And I remember people used to ask me, why do you share that story? Why do you have to be so vulnerable? Why do you talk about it? Is it because is it because you want people to know? And I remember saying to someone, it's really not about whether you want people to know. It's about what you can help people with. I remember I told someone that even if it was just going to save one person's life, I would tell it over and over. Why? For that one person that I can help, for that one person that I can say, you know what, it's not worth going down that path. I have gone down that path, and this is what happened. But guess what? There is someone or rather, I say there is a person that can help you. I will put it that way, which means God is there to help you. He's on hand. If you feel like you're getting overwhelmed, there are things that you can do. There are places you can go. There is help that you can get. You don't have to go down that path. If for only for that reason, I will share my story. And so it is, I'm sure, for a lot of us. Some people have gone through, having children out of wedlock, and then maybe they see somebody else going down that path, and the person feels like this is the end of the world. How am I going to handle this? People are laughing at me. How am I going to go through this season? And then you come alongside and you share your story. It's just phenomenal what it does. So the very first thing I want to say is do not waste your story. Are you listening to me? And maybe you have a story that can help 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. I want to encourage you, do not waste it. So when I say do not waste it, the question next question I'm going to ask you is, what are you doing with it? What are you doing with that story? How is that story benefiting somebody? I know that there, with our stories as well, there are seasons even with your story. There are processes, which means that you might not be at a point where you feel like you can share the entirety of the story because maybe you have, which I'm going to come to, you have not healed from the story. But there might be pieces that you might be able to just share with somebody. You're not able to share the full story because every time you want to talk about it, you just feel that pain and you're not ready to actually share with the world. You just feel like, I'm not ready yet. Maybe you've gone through a divorce and it was such a painful divorce and you just can't see yourself even encouraging somebody else. Fine. But you could just encourage somebody and say, you know what, I have been there. I have gone through it. I might not be able to share my full story with you right now, but guess what? You're going to overcome this season. You're going to overcome this challenge. It's going to be something better is coming around the corner. So just, even if it's just to encourage that person. So which leads me actually to number 2, which is heal from your story. So when you have a story, you want to make sure that you have actually healed from it. You want to, that's another thing you want to do. You want to heal from it. And when I say heal from it, means that maybe, let me use an example of, for example, I use an example of somebody getting divorced. Maybe you feel like the person really, really hurt you and it was such a painful experience. And, you can't really share with people because it was just so painful. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you get help. You don't want to keep it to yourself. How can you get help for that situation? How can you get help? How can you heal from it? So healing from it could be in various ways. Healing from it could be just wanting to just talk about it for some people. Healing from it could be going for counseling with a professional counselor that can help you. Maybe you need to get it out and then you can take it one day at a time, one step at a time. So whatever you need to do to heal, some of us just need to cry out. You just need to have a good cry. Some people just need a good cry and they will be fine. Some people, it's going to take a long period of time. So they have to just take it one day at a time, one step at a time. So if it's going to be a process, just start that process. That's the thing with healing. With healing, a process starts. I remember when I shared my story of how this woman I call the woman from hell didn't let me graduate. I shared that story of my life from many, many years ago. And one of the things about me was, when did that healing process really start? When could I really talk about that story? It was when I remember God had begun to deal with me about it. God had begun to say to me, or when God actually said to me, I'm not asking you to literally forgive her because it's not just going to happen like that. I'm asking you to surrender this woman to me. If you don't know about the story I'm talking about, I shared this, I think, about 2 weeks ago. I think in my podcast 2 weeks ago. There was this woman, she was one of my supervisors or one of my placements, and I was meant to graduate. She didn't let me graduate, one thing or the other, because she said I just wasn't ready. And then I had moved to Canada from the UK with this woman in my heart, and I just couldn't find in my heart to forgive her. And I think for me, the healing process really started on that day when God said, just release her to me. Let me help you forgive her. And like I said, it was a process. And I remember I let go because I literally felt a burden come off me. And it was a process. It took a while. I remember it was after a period of time that I could actually talk about that story without any pain anymore. Before then, it was so painful to share it. So you're someone, and that's why it's so important for you to heal from your story. If you're going to break free of every limitation, one of the ways that you break your limitation is by allowing God to heal you. Because if you do not go through a period of healing, you're going to go into situations whereby somebody's going to say something to bring back that pain, and you're going to get upset, or you're going to, because now you're still hurting, you're going to end up hurting other people. And that's why it's so important. No matter what situation you've gone through, it could be, a period, it could be rape. It could be, let me think of the worst case scenario. It could be rape. It could be, like I said, a divorce. It could be a loss of a child. It could be whatever it is, whatever situation that is there, how traumatic it has been, you need to heal from that situation. You and I need to heal. We need that time where if we just have to say, God, I just need you to heal me, to help me. When I went through that period of having those suicide attempts, I had to go through a period of healing. And for me, I remember I shared at the time what really worked for me was worship and the word. I had worship going on because that was what it was worship that helped me to unburden a lot of the things in my mind. It was a lot of things. It was just as I sat there just with God, I had to take time off just to just not take time off, but take time off mentally. I had to declutter what was in my mind. So whatever it is that you know you have to do to heal. And I always say, if you think you need help, please get help. If you need professional help, get professional help for whatever it is that you are going through. Don't say, oh, I can handle it on my own when you know you cannot handle it. Get someone that can help you in this process of healing. That takes me to number three. And number three, I'm going to say here, heal from the story is embrace this story. I want you to embrace your story. So whatever story is part of your life. I have so many now. I have my Susan Attempt story. I have the story of the woman that would let me graduate, the woman from hell, which I used to call her. I have, I have so many of them. My son's story that I shared that had leukemia. It's my third son story. I have so many stories, and I'm sure you have as well. My third son that they asked me to abort because they thought he was not going to survive. He was going to be born with Down syndrome, and I had to have 8 scans instead of 2 scans like everybody else. So I have so many of these stories. But guess what? These stories have now begun to. They have now. I'm going to put it that I use these stories to encourage other people, and so that is what another thing that you must do. So now you don't want to waste that story. You want to heal from that story. You want to make sure you embrace that story. So embracing the story means I see it as all things working together for good to them that love God. So everything I have gone through, when my son was going through leukemia, when my son had leukemia, that Romans 8:28 was what God really gave us. And I remember as I would share with him over and over again, the Bible says all things work together. He would say, Mommy, I don't want to hear that. All things is not working for good. It doesn't look like it. It was only 8, but he would say that. And I remember I would say to him, it might not look like it is working for your good right now, but God made me to see that eventually all the things would always work out. So God will use the ugly, He will use the bad, He will use the good, He will use the not so good, He will use the sick. He will use everything you and I have gone through. He would put it all together and then it would turn out as a beautiful story. So I remember I used to tell him, don't worry, all things are going to eventually work out. And now he turns 20 this year. And really, when he looks back, even he will say, yes, indeed, all things have worked out for good. When we look at the process from when he was sick at the age of age and all that God has done in the years, even with his faith, God used it to strengthen his faith. God used him, to teach him, things. And it's just been a journey. But is it that it has been just a wonderful journey? No, because he's had to go through different things. But guess what? God has now made everything work together. And I want to just say to a lady listening, a woman listening today, maybe there are things that you have gone through in life and you're thinking, I don't know how I'm going to handle this. This just seems too much. I can't handle this. This is a lot for me. I don't know how I'm going to go through this situation. Guess what? I want to encourage you today and say, embrace that story. Choose to embrace that story and choose to embrace whatever you're going through, because guess what? At the end, all things are going to work out. That thing that you're going through right now that you feel like is the end of the world, God is going to make it work out for your good. That situation that you went through 2 months ago and you thought it was going to take you out, guess what? It didn't take you out, because God has a plan for your life. And everything you and I go through, everything we go through, God has a plan for our lives. And so those things might look like they're going to take us out, but guess what? God has a way of saying, no, no, no. He always has the final say. Until he says, it's done, it is not done. Until he says it is finished, it is not finished. And so you can always hold on and say, no, the Bible says all things are working out for my good. So that sickness that you're going through, that you went through, guess what? God is going to make it work out for your good. You might not even see it right now, because I've seen that often we don't see it in the season. We don't see. There was this season of my life whereby things were so hard. And at the time, we didn't know what God was doing. But when I look back at that season now and I see how God used it to build up my faith, I'm like, I don't like what I went through, but I thank God that he made it work together now, because I look back and I use that story to strengthen other people. I use it to encourage other people. So I want to just encourage you, embrace whatever you're going through as a season. When I say embrace, it means that whatever I'm going through, embrace it. Embrace your story, that whatever you're going through in the season you're going through, because God is going to make it work out for your good. Number 4 thing that I want to share with you is learn from your story. So what are those things that you have been able to pick away from, the stories of your life? Sometimes there are various stories. Your life story is, I always believe, your life story is one big story, but it's made up of little stories. So what are the lessons that you've learned? What are those lessons that you've learned from some of those stories, those experiences that you've gone through, that God has taught you? Now, what are the things that you can learn from it? Somebody said, oh, I've gone through that divorce. The divorce wasn't a good thing, but are there lessons that you learned? Are there things that you learned? Okay, maybe next time I won't do it this way. Maybe I should have done that. Oh, God taught me. I actually matured because I learned this. Now, keep those lessons, because now you can use those lessons. You can leverage on those lessons that you have learned in that season. Number 5 I want to share is inspire others with your story. So I always believe that the stories, like I mentioned at the beginning, are not just for us. Your story is not just about you, it's not just for you, but your story is meant to encourage somebody else. So I always say, look around you and ask the question, ask yourself, who can I inspire with my story? I remember when I first started sharing on social media, what I really used to share at the time was my son's story. I would just, maybe there were times where I was just down, or I was going through some challenges, and I would just share. I would just share, like, how God was strengthening me and how God was encouraging me. And I remember I would just share, and I would share. And a lot of time I was vulnerable. But as I shared, people began to resonate with those things that I shared. And a lot of people reached out to me and said, thank you for sharing. That really encouraged me. That really strengthened me. I really needed to hear that. I really needed to take away from that. Why am I saying that? You never know who needs to hear your story until you share it. You never know who needs to be encouraged with your story. Often I talk about, the person that has no shoes will say, grumble and say, oh, I don't have any shoes, until that person sees someone that does not have any feet. And the person that doesn't have any feet is saying, oh, should I be grumbling? But then guess what? That person is alive. So he still has cause to thank God. What am I saying? For whatever situation you have gone through, it can always be an encouragement for somebody else. Whatever situation you're even going through right now, God is going to bring you out of that situation, and he will use it for his glory. He will use it to strengthen somebody else. So don't give up. Decide that you're not going to quit. Are there people that you can encourage? Sometimes we're even going through a season. It's interesting. Somebody was reminding me of this, I think about 2 years ago. At the time when I was going through one of my suicide attempts, when I felt like I just want to give up, I'm just done. She was in a very dark place, a very difficult position. And I remember at that time, I had to put what I was going through aside. I felt like she needed more encouragement. So I remember I was encouraging her. She didn't even know what I was going through. But I drew strength and said, you know what? I have to encourage this person. And she reminded me I think it was last year, she was reminding me that she didn't even know I was going through that at the time, but I still encourage her. So sometimes you are even going through, but then you see somebody that is going through a harder situation or a darker situation that looks like it's so dark. And they just need you to just hold their hands and say, it's going to be all right. They just need you to hold their hands and say, you know what? God will bring you through this. Why am I sharing this? Maybe there's somebody that needs to just hear this today. I just want to say, it's going to be all right. God is going to bring you through this season. God is going to bring you through this season. You are going to come out of it alive. You're going to use your story to encourage others as well, that they can also pull through out of their situation. So no matter where you are, always think of who can I inspire, even though I might be going through. And so I ask you, who can you inspire with your story? And I always say it doesn't have to be many, but it could even just be one person. Maybe somebody, you could just be one person you begin to inspire with your story. Just begin to encourage them. And guess what? As you begin to inspire them, I started in social media inspiring with my story. And as I started on social media, I remember I would share just share day after day and day after day. And people began to resonate with that story. And that was how I began to share consistently. And eventually, that was how I eventually, not too long after I started a YouTube channel. But why am I sharing that? Just thinking if I can just encourage one person today. It wasn't like I was completely out of what I was going through, but I just thought, who can I add value to? Because when you inspire others, you're adding value to them. Who can I be a blessing to? And so you might want to ask, who can you be a blessing to with your story? Who can you encourage your story? If sometimes it's just a quote, it's just a quote that you got, it's just a verse that you know that somebody just comes to your heart as you think of that, but then you're like, I'm going to send this to them. I don't know what they're going through, but God is leading me to send this to them. I'm just going to send it. It could be a quote, it could be a verse, it could be a word, it could be just sharing, like I said, your story. It could just be a piece of your story. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. So it's so important for you and I to inspire others with our story. And so when I talk about inspire, another thing that you must do is you must share your story. So you might wonder, oh, I spoke about inspire. So inspire is like you beginning to talk about the story, beginning to encourage others. Sharing your story might be on a bigger scale because now you're thinking, I'm actually looking at being vulnerable. So sharing your story here talks about maybe I want to put it in a book. Maybe I want to begin to share it like category. I want to begin to share it bit by bit. I want to actually go through the whole story and begin to share with people. I want to break it down and begin to share. So sharing here could mean many things. You could be sharing it in beginning to share it on a bigger platform and beginning to share it in audio form. It might be beginning to share it in a book. You might think, I want to share my story. So let me add that I want to write my story. So you want to write your story, which I'm going to come to. So you want to share your story. And that leads to the next one, which is writing your story. And writing your story here, the last one I'm going to share is publishing your story. So sharing your story, writing your story almost go hand in hand because as you share it, it could be various forms. It could be audio, it could be in written form, it could be sharing in places, it could be just a speaking engagement, it could just be sharing with your colleagues, it could be just sharing with a friend, it could be sharing things that you have not shared in the past. So sharing your story is huge. It could be in various formats, it could be on various platforms, really just sharing your story. And the very last one, which will be publish your story, is you can decide, okay, now I want to share it, not just in audio form, not just on social media, not just with friends, but now I want to document my story. I'm going to write it. I'm going to publish my story. I want somebody to be able to pick up my story after I am long gone and be able to learn from my story, to be able to learn lessons, to be able to learn. I'm going to write a memoir. I'm going to write a journal of my story. I'm going to write a novel about my story. I just want to publish my story, which means I want it to bless lives beyond me, because long after I'm gone, my story is going to be a legacy that somebody can pick up and they can begin to learn from. So those are 7 things that you can do with your story. And I'll just recap those 7 things. First thing I said was, do not waste your story. I spoke about healing from your story. I spoke about embracing your story. I spoke about learning from your story, sharing from your story, inspiring others with your story. And I spoke about writing and publishing your story. If this has been a blessing to you, I hope you'll be able to share with somebody else as well. If you're watching this on audio, if you're listening to this on either Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, I want to say thank you. If you want to watch it in video format as well, you can on my YouTube channel, oluwalabode.com. And if you're looking to write or publish your story, guess what? I have a writer's bootcamp. I run a writer's bootcamp, and I'm having another one, a course starting in May 2nd to May the 31st. So if you're looking to write your story, if you're looking to publish your story, don't hesitate to send me a DM. You can also find out more details on my website, oluwalabode.com/write. you'll find out how you can join the cohort. Have a phenomenal day. I'll see you again next week.